Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Thibodeau, and I am the president of the National Association of Latino Healthcare Executives, DFW Chapter, officially known as NALHE DFW. In January 2020 was actually our official launch for the DFW chapter. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about NALHE, and hopefully you'll be interested in joining our family. NALHE DFW originated with the purpose of creating representation for Latinos. That includes diversity and inclusion and looking at health equity issues. Today, we have a special presentation that I want to share with you called Recalibrate, Breaking Through the Mental Barriers. Thanks to Milton Gonzalez, we're able to present this presentation to you guys. And hopefully we have some great key takeaways. So the only way that this is possible is through sponsors that we have, such as Christus Health, Parkland, and Methodist. And hopefully many more that would want to come and support our organization. It allows us to put on great programming, develop mentoring initiatives, as well as give people a seat at the table that they've never had the opportunity for before. So with that all being said, I'd like to give you some ground rules for today's event. Please keep your audio on mute. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A. Adjust your computer volume as needed. If you experience any technical issues, exit and re-enter the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. And now we'll go into discussion, and I'd like to bring on Javelin Castellanos. She is a marketing chair, and she has a special presentation for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, Javelin, that was amazing. You made my heart rate go up. Thought that would make it some tachycardia there, but it was really a lovely performance. Thank you so much. Everybody, my name is Mario Rodriguez. I am the co-chair of the mentorship committee of our DFW chapter for NALHE. And it's really an honor for me to be able to participate with such a stellar group and really as being a leader in the mentoring committee to be able to pour back into our community, specifically students and early careerists. It's just an honor. And before I talk a little bit more about myself and introduce Milton, I really want to congratulate all of you in investing in yourself. You will see that if you consistently invest in yourself, and consistently is a key word, I think you should write that down, the return on investment is going to be much more than what you could ever get at a bank or anywhere else. So congratulations on that. My background, I've been in healthcare for over 20 years. My areas of expertise lie in the clinical laboratory diagnostics area. and in health IT. And last year, Lori reached out to me, and we had an opportunity to have a conversation, and this just seemed like an amazing opportunity to join NALHE, and now to be participating and leading some initiatives from a mentorship standpoint with our mentoring committee. It's amazing. I want to say that this story starts in 2016, where I had just overcome some adversity in life, and I knew that I needed to take a new path forward, and it had to be a different path, right, to achieve a different outcome. And as I was scrolling through social media, I came across this event called Mindshift, and it was a mastermind group, and the leader of this group was a gentleman that I'd come across in the running community, out in the trails, and the occasional 5K and the McAllen Marathon, as a matter of fact. So I kind of knew that he was a good guy, because runners, by and large, are good people. But beyond that, I knew that I knew him from being the principal of my daughter's elementary, which was Covenant Christian Academy. And I know that what blessing he is to those kids and to his team. So I knew that I had to participate in this event. And to keep it short, Milton planted so many seeds in our mastermind group, but one seed that he planted with me was the seed of consistency. And after cultivating and nurturing and watering the seed of consistency, I'm now at DFW, working for Roche Diagnostics, an amazing organization, impacting thousands and millions, really, of patients' lives throughout the world. Honored to do that. And what I'd like to tell you today is, as you hear Milton speak, and you have these takeaways, treat those as seeds and put them in your mind and in your heart. And if you struggle and you think, well, I'm not a farmer, I don't know how to cultivate, or how do I, that's why you're here, as the for our mentorship committee and our group that we're starting, is collectively we're going to be the ones that will be helping you find those ways to hopefully achieve some of your goals and objectives. So it is an honor, really, to without further ado, to present my good friend and somebody I consider like a brother, Milton Gonzalez.
All right, Mario, thank you so much for that. What a presentation, and a high standard to live up to. I don't like it when I get these amazing presentations, because it puts so much pressure on me. But Mario, thank you for sharing that, man. It blesses my heart like you have no idea. Javelin, thank you so much for playing Amazing Grace. I'm reminded every day that God's grace is sufficient, because without that, boy, I wouldn't be here today with you guys. So I just, first of all, want to say that I'm extremely excited. Extremely excited. I would say this to the Hispanic community, to those Spanish-speaking people: es tiempo de voltear la tortilla, porque esto se pone caliente. So I just want you to know that, as Mario said, you're going to take away some things today, some little nuggets, some good takeaways that are seeds. And he kind of took, he stole my thunder for a moment there. He already gave you some takeaways. So I want to go ahead and start, because let me tell you that what I'm unpacking today is actually a 6-hour conference that I've watered. I mean, that I've kind of comprised into an hour and 15 minutes. And so I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. So my screen, my face is going to go, it's going to go smaller, but you're going to be able to see my screen. So let me try and do this. Let's see here. Let's get this going. And so here we are. All right. Recalibrar. Para muchos de ustedes que no sepan, yo crecí en Monterrey, Nuevo León. I grew up in Monterrey most of my life, and therefore my parents were very particular about me learning both languages. And so we had a tutor who taught us proper grammar in English and proper grammar in Spanish, because it was very important for them. So today, Our theme is recalibrate, recalibrar. That's breaking through mental barriers. Now, you probably know this by now because, you know, the marketing department has done a great job at promoting this to that and putting up my information, right, on LinkedIn. So it's been amazing. They've done a fantastic job. So I want you to know my background's in psychology. I have a master's in life coaching with Liberty University, and I am soon to finish my doctoral work with in trauma. So psychology is my thing. It's always been my thing, but I'm also an educator. So I love teaching. You're probably going to notice that today. I'm also a pastor. So what that means is I preach, I marry people, I bury people, and I try to keep them together and keep them from divorcing. So that's what I do also. So I'm also a minister of the gospel. So as an educator, I've been taught by Dr. Wong, who's a great mentor of mine. Dr. Wong, who's in his late 80s, one of the most renowned teachers in the world. He says that before you start a presentation, or when you start a presentation, people need to get to know you. So in a nutshell, just like that, I want to introduce my family to you. So you see that I'm also a person. This right here is my son. This is David. He's my oldest. He's 29 years old. He's a wonderful, lovely young man of God. He's got so much energy in him, and he's a leader in his own area. He's an overlander. He's a former Border Patrol agent. He's an amazing guy, my firstborn pride and joy. This one right here is Daniel. Now, Daniel, he's my youngest one. So you probably notice there's a big difference. Well, there's a 21 age gap between the two. And a lot of people will ask me, well, how did that happen? And I go, seriously, come on, you know how that happened. So 21-year gap between the two. Last night, Daniel was reading a little book like this by John Maxwell. I've been on the President's Advisory Council with John Maxwell, and John Maxwell's my mentor. You probably read some of his leadership books. He's got about 99 of them. And last night, Daniel was reading a book that John gave him and signed for him and wrote a little inscription in it, and it's Running with the Giants. And there he was reading his chapter on David, and so he was answering the questions, and the question was, what is your greatest limitation? Now, I'm talking about, he's 8 years old, okay? He's in bed writing his answers. What is your greatest limitation? And this turkey writes, my parents. And I look at him and I go, Daniel, hold on. What do you mean that I'm your greatest limitation? He says, well, Dad, you're always telling me, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. I said, that's for your own good. It's to keep you safe. He says, oh, yeah, you're right. So that's Daniel. Love him to pieces. These right here are my grandkids. This is Ezra and Emery and their dog Piper. And so love them to death. They're my pride and joy too. And so then I have here my wife. She's also a master counselor, has been an educator for 20 plus years, as I have as well. And so she is my wife, but she is my second wife. And so a lot of people, when I introduce her as my second wife, I don't introduce her, by the way, as my second wife. She's my current wife, but I've been married before. And a lot of people ask me, Milton, hold on. You're a marriage counselor. What do you mean you've been married before? Why didn't you succeed at your first one? Well, it's not that I didn't succeed. Let me tell you a quick story so that you can understand how all of this story that I'm about to tell you has affected my life and gotten me to the place where I am today here with you, sharing these stories with you. So this is my first wife. Let me go back again. This is my current wife. This is my first wife. The little young man right there, that's David, who's now 29. He was 15 at the time. Well, a quick story in a nutshell, because I can't go into this in detail, but let me tell you that you probably know in the medical world, you've heard of Hodgkin's lymphoma, where she suffered from Hodgkin's lymphoma for 15 years, married for 17 years. But in 2007, I came home and she looked at me in the eyes and she says, Milton, I need to talk to you. I really need to talk to you right now. And she had this excitement in her voice and in her eyes, a twinkle. She was pumped, but I couldn't listen to her at the time. I didn't have the time because I didn't tell you that we raised 14 foster kids. Yes, we raised a total of 14 foster kids. To this day, they're all adults and they call me dad. So 14 foster kids. So at the time we had about 4 of them living with us, our son also. And so I was doing a little bit of everything, helping everyone get their homework in order, prepping dinner, getting things ready because my wife didn't have the energy. I mean, she was going through chemotherapy, radiation. She was actually at that time had undergone an experimental procedure at MD Anderson. And so she was never really energetic, but she was just a lovely, lovely soul. But she says to me, I need to talk to you. And I said, hold on, I need to get some things done before we speak. Well, I went and took care of business, but in the evening, once we had put the kids to bed, once we had prayed with them, we had laughed, we had told stories, we gave them a kiss goodnight. We went into our bedroom and I said to my wife, I said, okay, so what is this that you need to talk to me about? And she said to me, you know what? Now you're going to have to wait because I don't have time to talk. She says, I've got to get some things done. Well, she went, she took a shower, she got her hair ready, she painted, she did her nails. She did a lot of things that were kind of odd because she was wearing a morphine patch. I mean, she had just gotten that day in the morning 2 units of blood transfused. 2 units. This was a weekly occurrence because she had a problem with her blood. She wasn't producing red blood cells. And so there we were. She was wearing a morphine patch. She's doing all these things. It's close to 11 o'clock. Finally, she sits down on the edge of the bed. Now listen, she sits down on the edge of the bed and I go over to her and I say, okay, are you ready to talk? She says, yes. She says, but I want you to listen closely. She says, tonight I'm going home, Milton. I'm going home. And I looked at her, I said, you are home. What do you mean? I said, has that morphine affected your mind? You're not thinking straight. She says, no, you need to understand. I'm going home to where I've always wanted to be, a place where I'm no longer going to be in pain. And I looked at her and I said, you know, you're speaking gibberish to me. I said, you need to stop. You need to go to sleep. Let me pray for you. Go to bed. She says, Milton, I need you to understand this, that life is not over for you and that I want you to continue living. Your mission is not over. God has plans for you. And so I prayed that God would bring a woman into your life that you would see and would know that that is who you are to marry. And she's going to help you further your purpose in life. She's going to love you. She's going to love David, but she's going to love God above all things. When you see her, you will know. And I said, you know what? It's time to go to bed. This is really freaking me out, to say the least. Let's go to bed. She said to me, listen and understand that I'm telling you the truth. And she gave me 3, here go 3 nuggets, 3 very important nuggets that she gave me. She said, number 1, she says, Milton, live life in such a way that when you die, the minister doesn't have to lie about you. Wow. I mean, come on. This wasn't out of a book. This was straight out of her heart. Live life in such a way that when you die, the minister, she said, the preacher doesn't have to lie about you. The second nugget she gave me was live intentionally and never by accident. Live intentionally. She says, live with a purpose. Don't just wake up randomly, haphazardly, without a direction. Have an intentional life, a purpose. And then lastly, she said, live life to add value to others and to leave a legacy of love. Leave a legacy of love. And I'm reminded of the great Maya Angelou, who once said, at the end of the day, now listen, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you look like. People won't remember what you sounded like. People will not remember what you said. They will only remember how you made them feel. How you made them feel. Leave a legacy of love, she said to me. Leave a legacy of love. The next day, we went to bed, we prayed, we went to sleep. The next morning, as I woke up at 5:30 in the morning and I turned around to give her a kiss on the cheek and to say, Buenos dias, corazón, as I did every day, when I gave her a kiss and I spoke into her ear, I didn't get a reply. And so I said it again and again and again. And I didn't get a reply. She had passed away at 4 in the morning, right next to me. I give thanks every day that I was able to pray her straight to the pearly gates and to drop her off. It was a sad occasion, to say the least, but my son, David, taught me a lesson. As he walked over to that bedroom and he saw that mom lay there lifeless, he gave her a kiss on the forehead. He looked at her and I said, son, it's okay to cry. And he said to me, cry, Dad, cry. 15 years, Dad, of suffering. Today, finally, she runs, she lives, she breathes, she's without pain. She will not come back to me, but one day I will be with her. And so she taught me a lesson. And the story was so powerful, that I was invited to speak at an event, and I was able to speak and do a TED Talk. I mean, it was powerful. They said, you know what? We want you to share that TEDx message. And the message is called, You Are What You Think. If you Google my name and You put You Are What You Think TEDx, you'll find it. It's a great 12-minute TED Talk. Take a box of Kleenex with you because it shares every single detail. And so would you know, you're probably asking yourself, well, whatever happened? Why? How did you remarry? Well, I was a preacher. I was at the door after a Sunday service about a year or so later after I had widowed. And I was waiting there. I was saying goodbye to all the church members. And then finally the visitors came around the corner, and there was a young lady who was walking with the crowd, and I saw her, and I knew beyond a shadow of doubt that that was the person. And I did what every pastor should never, ever, ever do. I shook her hand. Not only did I shake her hand, I said to her, "Nice to meet you. My name is Milton. What is your name?" She said, "Elena." I said, "Elena, nice to meet you. May I ask you a question?" She said, "Yes, Pastor." I said, "Are you married?" A terrible question for a pastor to ask. She looked at me. She said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Are you married?" And she says, "No, I'm not. I'm single." So I knew that that was the one. And so she's my wife today. And that's why we have an 8-year-old son. So I encourage you to listen to the TED Talk. I hope that it blesses you tremendously. Well, as I was standing in the line there to speak, to do my TED Talk, there were another 15 people in front of me. I was one of 16 speakers. And it's about two spaces in front of me was a gentleman. He was a tall, good-looking guy with a very nicely manicured beard, some really cool glasses. Hair was slicked back. He was wearing an Italian suit, probably Italian cashmere. It was a skinny suit. Pants were short. He was wearing no socks. He had some really nice brown Italian loafers. I mean, the guy looked like he was straight out of a GQ magazine. I thought, okay, this guy is speaking. I need to know his story. I didn't know the guy. He had flown in to Texas from the Big Apple. And so I went over to him. I tapped on his shoulder and I said to him, "Hey," I said, "What's your name?" He says, "My name's Art, man." And he had this tone when he spoke. "My name is Art, man." And I said, "Art," I said, "So you're from New York?" He says, "No, man, I'm not from New York." He says, "I flew in from New York, man." He says, "I'm from Heidelberg." And I said, "Heidelberg? You're from Germany?" I was there last year. I said, "Heidelberg is a beautiful place. I love everything about Heidelberg." And the guy looks at me and says, whoa, bro. Whoa. He says, "I'm not from Heidelberg, Germany, bro." He says, "I'm from Heidelberg, Texas." Heidelberg, Texas. Yeah, he says, yeah. Heidelberg, Texas is in Mercedes, close to South Padre Island. He says, it's a slum colonia, man. It's a dump. So I looked it up, and this is exactly what it looks like. This is a house from Heidelberg. It doesn't look like the one in Germany. So this guy was from Heidelberg, Texas, and there he was standing in the room about to speak. And I look at him and I said, "Hey, do you have time to share your story with me? I want to hear your story from you. Tell me your story." He says, "Really, man? You want to hear my story?" I said, "I want to hear your story." He says, "Well, I grew up poor, orphaned because our father left us when I was a kid. My mother was a seamstress. My mother," he said, would fix clothes for other people. He says, "So I started liking the seamstress business, and I started to like fashion, but I was just a kid living in a dirt floor home." He says, "We were dirt poor. We were migrants." He says, "We were living off of welfare. I had learning disabilities." He said, "I was ridiculed and made fun of because of how I dressed." He said, "But one day I was in the middle school and I came home and my mother said, 'Art, there's a plastic bag over there in the other room with a bunch of used clothes that a lady dropped off. You might want to see if there's anything in there that'll fit you.'" He says, "Man, I went straight to that bag and I put my hand all the way down into that bag and I pulled out," he says, "I pulled out a blue polo." He says, "Oh, I had always wanted a polo." He says, "I had always wanted a polo." He says, "This polo was too big and it was wrinkled, but man, I washed it, I ironed it, and I wore it twice a week to school." He says, "That polo shirt changed my life because now I fit in. People no longer made fun of me, man. I looked important." And I told my mother that day, he said, "Mom, you see this shirt?" He says, "One of these days, I'm going to buy a polo for you and for me straight from the store. They're going to be matching shirts and they're going to be brand new because I'm going to make money one of these days, Mom." And she said, "Mijo, si tú lo crees, yo te apoyo. Yo sé que tú puedes. I know you can do this. I believe in you, son." So Art was told by his teachers that he would never go to college, that he should drop out and get a job at an HEB, at a supermarket, that he should go to school maybe to get a 6-month a quick technical certification to do something just to start working because he was born on the wrong side of the tracks. Art said, no, ma'am, I'm going to school. I like fashion. I mean, this guy went to school. He went to college and he graduated. He came back to his hometown in Mercedes. He got into his car, his old car, and he drove himself to the Big Apple. He went all the way to New York. I mean, he had his heart and his mind set on a goal. He went all the way to the Big Apple, and as he got there, he worked for a sandwich shop. After that, a few years later, he got a job at a department store. He started out, he was one of those stalkers. He would fold clothes and rearrange everything. And one day he was made assistant to the manager. But after many years of showing great creativity, he was in charge of all the displays. He was in charge of marketing. People knew of his work ethics. People knew of his mindset, that he was never going to give up until he reached his goal. Let me tell you, this is a true story, guys. True story. After several years of working at that department store, a lady showed up. The lady looks at him and says, "Are you Art?" He says, "Yes, ma'am, I am." He says, "My boss would like for you to come and work for us." "Your boss wants me to work for you guys." "Okay, is this job going to pay me more than it pays here?" "Oh yeah, absolutely." "Is this job in the fashion line? Is it the fashion industry?" "Oh, absolutely." He says, "Well, yes, I'm interested, but I have a final question for you. Who's your boss?" The lady says, "My boss is Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren Polo." Crazy. I mean, the guy pulled out that shirt when he was in middle school. "I'm going to buy you one of these, Mom." Ralph Lauren hears about this guy, invites him to come over and work. And guess what? He's talking to me and tears are starting to roll down my cheeks. And I'm thinking, my story sucks. This guy's story is crazy. What a story. But then he goes on to say, this was in 2015, mind you. He says, "Milton, in 2016, I want you to turn on the TV and I want you to turn the channel," he says, "to the Olympic Games in Rio in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil." He says, "And I want you to watch as the American team marches out. I want you to look at their uniforms." He says, "Because those uniforms were designed by me, the kid from Heidelberg, from the dirt poor house," he says, the orphan kid, the kid who was supposed to have ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, and all these crazy things. He says, "I designed it. He signed it, but that's my creativity." I said, "Wow, that is insane." And he says, "You want to hear another thing?" He says, "I just resigned." He says, "I resigned because I started my own brand and it's called Cielo Brand." He says, "And I'm going to be making the clothes of the rich and the famous." He says, "People from Hollywood, I'm going to be designing their clothes." Well, let me fast forward a little bit. I want to let you know that Art didn't stop there. In case you've not heard the news, a young man from the Rio Grande Valley, from Mercedes, Texas, he was the one who was chosen to design the pantsuit for the Vice President of the United States. Powerful. Art Castañeda, the kid from Mercedes, Texas. And so there's always that question, what was the secret to his success? Like, what's the secret sauce, man? I want to know. I want to know. Now, I want you to know this, that whatever I'm sharing with you today, what I preach, I practice. What I preach, I practice. What I preach, I practice. I want you to know that. If you look at my back wall, you probably can't see, but I have my medals over there. I'm not doing that to show off. But yes, as Mario said, I'm a marathon runner. I've done New York, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. What I set my mind and my heart to, I work for it, I work for it, and I work for it. So what I'm teaching you today is something that I practice. So what was the secret to Art's success? Let me fast forward a little bit. Let me go to someone else. I want to show you a different person. This is Eliot Kipchog. Eliot Kipchog just showed the world, he showed the world that it is possible to run a marathon in less than 2 hours. That's crazy. Because if you didn't know this, a marathon is 26.2 miles. 26.2 miles. That means that this guy, Eliot Kipchog, he was running at a speed of about 17 miles per hour, kind of. Some people can't ride a bike at that speed. Come on, this guy was running. He broke the world record. And so they went to Eliot Kipchog, who is, I believe he's somewhere, some small town close to Egypt or somewhere, Ethiopia. And they asked Eliot Kipchog, Eliot Kipchog, congratulations, they said. How did you do this? What is the secret to your success? His answer, I loved it. His answer was very, very simple. He said, I believed that I could, and therefore I did. Boom, baby. Come on. As simple as that. I believed that I could, and therefore I did. How many of you remember the story of the little engine that could? I mean, he was going, I don't think I can. I don't think I, but then he changed his phraseology. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. You've got to change your phraseology. We're going to get into that. I want to prime you a little bit with these stories because I want you to understand. So this is Eliot Kipchog. I met this lady in Florida as I was attending a John Maxwell conference. There was about 3,500 of us. I got to speak to the group there briefly. And then John presented Maria Cristina. Maria Cristina is from Portugal. Now, Maria Cristina has a crazy story. I had the opportunity I was blessed to stay after the event. We had a great conversation. And she shared with me that she was born in Portugal. Her mother was schizophrenic. And when she was only about 6 years old, she was left in the arms of a total stranger, a woman who had 7 kids. She was white as white complected can be in Portugal. And she was left in the arms of a African-American woman, or an African woman who was living in Portugal. She had 7 kids. And the mother said, would you take care of her? I'm going into town to go apply for a job, but I'll come back and get her. And she took off and never came back. And so she was orphaned. But this woman raised her. And this woman said, if I can feed 7, surely I can feed 8. So she added Maria Cristina to her list. Now, Maria Cristina never went to school. She never got an education. At age 12, her stepmom, or not her stepmom, but her foster mom passed away. So she was left to fend for herself. Well, Maria Cristina started working at a restaurant as waitress. And one day, after many years, one of her customers said, Maria Cristina, you have such charisma. You have such a pose. You know, why don't you leave what you're doing right now? And she had worked as a waitress. She had worked as a maid. She had worked as a nanny. He says, and I want to offer you a job. He says, I am one of the executives for the United Emirates Airlines. Would you come and work for us? She says, absolutely, I would love it. So Maria Cristina gets trained, no education, mind you, no education. Keep that in mind. She gets trained. She works for United Emirates. She's on the airplane. The airplane, after several years, she's flying to the U.S., but on their way to the U.S., there's a problem and the plane has to emergency land in Bangladesh. Now listen, I hope you get inspired. Has to land in Bangladesh. So they land in Bangladesh and she wants to go out and walk the city. She has 24 hours to stay in Bangladesh. So she goes around and walks the streets and she notices that there are children, poor children living on the streets of Bangladesh in boxes and in holes, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of homeless children. And she stood there in the middle of the multitude and she had this epiphany. She had this moment, this revelation. And she said to herself, I'm coming back one day and I'm going to take 600 of these kids off of the streets of Bangladesh. 600 of these kids. So she got on the airplane. She started to think about how she could do this. And she went back to Bangladesh. She did her research and they told her that in order to buy property, to build a building and to start feeding these kids and to bring them in and to get them an education, it was going to cost her initially $1 million to get that done. Well, Maria Cristina had no education. She didn't have $1 million, but she had a passion. Listen, passion. She had to recalibrate her destination. She had a goal that she was going for, but then she completely had to recalibrate. She had to pivot. She had to pivot and go a different direction. So Maria Cristina, this is crazy. She says, Milton, I went onto Google. How can I make $1 million? How can I save up $1 million to get all these kids off the streets of Bangladesh? Well, let me tell you, this is what Maria Cristina did. Google said, well, you know, you could participate in these different events and they all have prize money. So what did Maria Cristina do? She wasn't an athlete, mind you, no education. Here's what she did. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and that earned her prize money. She then swam the English Channel. Yes, this woman had never been in a pool. She hired a coach. Well, she didn't hire him. This coach had to do it for free because she had no money. She had this coach teach her how to swim. She swam across the English Channel. The first woman her age to do so. In the middle, if you've heard of the English Channel, it's freezing cold plus full of jellyfish. She swam the English Channel. She ran 7 marathons in 7 days. In other words, In 7 consecutive days, she ran 26.2, 26.2, 26.2, 26.2. Not only did she do that, she climbed Mount Aconcagua and made money from that. She went on to run 7 ultramarathons on 7 continents. An ultramarathon, Mario knows this, an ultramarathon is 100 miles. She ran 7 100-mile races on 7 continents and made money from that. Then she went on to climb to the summit of Mount Everest, becoming the youngest woman to do so. Ha! I mean, come on. This is crazy. Talk about passion. Let me parentheses right there. When you have a passion like hers, you don't need an alarm clock, my friend. You have a passion which is coupled with purpose. You know what you've been called to do. You get up in the morning, beyond a shadow of a doubt. There is no doubt what you are going to do that day. There's a passion that drives you. So she climbs Mount Everest, and then she ends up setting 7 Guinness Book World Records. Wow! Maria Cristina, to this day, she has taken 600 kids off the streets of Bangladesh. She has sent 100 of those to college, most of them to Ivy League schools that have given those kids scholarships. I'm talking about a woman who was not an athlete, who had no education. What does she have? Purpose. What did she have? Passion. What does she have? Drive. What did she do? She did it consistently. Whatever she did, it was consistent effort. And so my last one here is this woman. Some of you probably know that face. The woman's name is Malala. Now, you know Malala's story. She's, I believe, from Pakistan. Malala was, she was a young girl when the Taliban heard that she was out there promoting, women's rights, and that all women should have the right to an education and the right to drive and all these things. And she was going to push it. She was a teenager. And one of the Taliban members, hunted her down, found her, and shot her in the face. Didn't kill her. She ended up in the hospital. She recovered. And when she got back up again, she went on to do the same thing, to promote the rights of women in Pakistan. That's a passion and a purpose. And Malala said this. She said, if one man can destroy everything, why can't one girl change it? Boom, boom, boom. Home run. Come on. These people, let me tell you, there's no difference between Malala and you, my friend. She was born a baby just like you. She probably had less opportunity than you. So there's opportunity and potential in you. I want you to understand that. You see, when people think of success, here's what they see. They see only the tip of the iceberg. They see the top. That top right there that says success, that's what people see. They go, oh man, he's probably born in a wealthy home. His parents were educated. I mean, come on, this guy had it made. I mean, come on. That's what they see. When they see people who have done well in life, who have succeeded, Mario has a story he was sharing. People might see his success, but they don't know all the things he had to endure. I mean, come on, Javelin, who's playing the violin, you think she just got up one morning and started playing that violin? No, she probably had to play for hours and hours and hours and hours. Malcolm Gladwell, listen, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers. He's written several books, What the Dog Saw, David and Goliath. I mean, he's written several books. But in his book Outliers, he says that in order for a man to become a master at his craft, he's got to do that one thing. How many hours? 10,000 hours. Over and over and over and over and over. 10,000 hours. Think about it. 10,000 hours are the same thing to become a master at his craft. See, people see success. What they don't see is disappointment, persistence, hard work, huge risks, late nights, struggles, competition, discipline, courage, doubt, criticism, personal failures, adversity, and rejections. That, my friends, is what leads to success if you react to it appropriately. Some people will be hit with disappointment, with criticism, and you'll find them on the sidelines, nursing their wounds, crying, while others, man, they just dust the dirt off their clothes, they roll up their sleeves, and they put on a fight. They keep going. They keep going. They keep going because they've got that tenacity. They've got that resilience. Resilient metal cannot be bent out of shape. If it's bent out of shape, it goes back to its original form. That's resilience, is being able to adapt. You've had to adapt during COVID. And those who didn't adapt, those are the ones who are sitting on a lazy boy chair flipping through Netflix right now. Those who didn't adapt. What they did, they conformed to what happened. You did not conform. You're here right now on an evening. You're here right now learning and growing. And so again, the question is, what was the secret to their success? And this is the big question that I always ask people is like, what do you think was the secret to their success? That's a big question. Well, the secret to their success, everyone has a different answer. They say tenacity, persistence, hard work, determination. They say discipline. But every one of those different elements, they're all founded in the same area. They're founded in what we call mindset. They're all in mindset. Yes, this is a big buzzword, mindset. You've heard it over and over and over. A lot of people say, you got to have the right mindset. You don't have the right mindset. You got to have the right mindset. This is a novel term. It's very novel. But let me tell you, my father's 80 years old. My father taught me this novel term before it was a novel term. When I was only 9 years old and I was at the library reading John Maxwell books, Zig Ziglar books, Og Mandino books, Dale Carnegie books. I wasn't reading any comic books. I was never interested. I wanted to be able to stand in front of an audience like I am right now and to deliver a powerful message, to make a difference in people's lives, to leave a legacy of love. My father taught me the power of yet, and I'll explain that later. Mindset is a powerful thing. You can change everything in your environment. You can change your clothes. You can buy yourself a nice car. If you don't change your mindset, the same things will perpetuate over time. Now listen to me. Here goes a nugget for you. If you always do what you've always done, and you always think what you've always thought, you will always get what you've always gotten. It's that simple. Si siempre piensas lo que siempre has pensado y siempre haces lo que siempre has hecho, siempre obtendrás lo que siempre has obtenido. Así de sencillo. If you bring old habits into the new year, you will produce the exact same outcome. The exact same outcome. So mindset is 80% of what you do. That's your psychology. Your psychology. 80%. 80% is psychology. If you're going to run a marathon, 80% is believing that you can. Step number one, whatever you're going to do, step number one is believing that you can. That's 80% of your output. 80% of your output. Now, what is 20%? 20% is skill, training, preparation, and experience. Skill, training, preparation, and experience. That's only 20%. So the other day, I interviewed an educator who's a doctor in education on my podcast, Recalibrate with Milton. Her name is Maria Bridwell. And we were talking about how she prepared for her marathon. And she says that she had to run 600 miles in 6 months before the big race. 100 miles per month per 6 months in order to run 26.2 miles. That was the skill, the training, the preparation, the experience. But the greatest battle was to convince herself that she could. That was the greatest battle. The greatest battle was to convince herself that she was able, that she could do this, that it was doable. A lot of people succumb to that 80%. You've got everything else in line. But when it comes to, when push comes to shove, you lock down and you think, I can't do this. And so your mindset messes you up. Let me tell you, Ben Sharma, I love this. Ben Sharma talks about the 4 interior empires. This is Ben Sharma's work, and I want to share it with you today because we're talking about recalibrate. If you want to recalibrate, Mario said something a while ago. If you want to produce a different outcome, you've got to change your beliefs. Listen, guys, you've got to change your beliefs if you want to produce a different outcome. Again, if you always do what you've always done and you always think what you've always thought, you will always get what you've always gotten. It's that simple. Okay, so I want to focus right now on these 4, but first of all, on mindset. So just understand, mindset is what you read and what you learn, what you talk about, what you reflect upon, what you meditate on, what you visualize, what influences you, your environments and your performances. That's mindset. And so Gandhi said this. He says, never allow anyone with dirty feet to walk in your mind. Guys, take this, please. Take this for you. That's a seed. Boom. Put it in your head. Seed. Never let anyone with dirty feet walk through your mind. In other words, don't expose your mind to idiots. I don't know how to say it. Don't expose your mind to idiots. Because eventually, over time, the repetition of that one idea will set in your mind like concrete. Listen, Jim Rohn, the great Jim Rohn said this. You become, Marty remembers this, you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Who are you spending time with? This is your environment. This is your conversations. Very important. Most important, Miles Monroe said this. Miles Monroe, he was a pastor. He talked about visualizing. He said, sight is of the eyes, while vision is of the heart. In other words, whatever it is that you want to do in life, you've got to be able to visualize it to the point, to the extreme, that you can sense it with all 5 physical senses, with all 5. Whatever it is that you want to do, if it's to climb to the summit of Mount Everest, you have to be able to feel the cold, to smell the snow. You've got to feel the breeze. I mean, come on, you've got to be able to visualize it. Helen Keller, the woman who was blind, you probably have heard of Helen Keller growing up. She was blind. She was labeled an animal because she was unruly. But a woman came, a teacher, and mentored her, and she became the great Helen Keller. But Helen Keller said this. She said, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight, but yet no vision. No vision. You see, mindset is having a vision. You've got to have a vision for yourself. So take all of this and start to meditate, evaluate. Who am I spending time with? What am I listening to? What does my environment look like? What am I submitting myself to? What am I reading? What am I listening to? What am I watching? Because all of that is going to shape and mold who you are. Now let me go to the next one. The next interior empire is heart set. First one was mindset. Now it's heart set. Heart set is very simple. What people struggle with the most is letting go. Letting go. People hold grudges. They hold resentments. They are angered. They don't forgive. And their heart starts to become tainted, hardened, calloused. And so it starts to affect them. I want you to understand this. We are not only mind. We are a mind. We are a soul. We are a heart. And we are a body. We're a 4-part being. And you have to focus on all 4. So letting go of those things, I encourage you to make a list of those things that you have yet to let go of. Meditate on them, reflect on them at the end of the day. Start to make a list. And you might say, well, I've forgiven everyone. A man once told me I've forgiven everyone except for my mother-in-law. You got to forgive her. Otherwise, your heart will be hardened. So heart set, second empire. The third one is health set. You can't be a leader if you're out of shape, my friend. You can't be an influencer if you're out of shape, my friend. You can't leave a legacy if you're all out of shape and you're on junk food, my friend. You cannot. The more you take care of yourself, the longer you will live and the greater your influence will be. It's a fallacy to believe that you're a great leader when you're all out of shape. Now, I'm not being critical of you. I'm not being critical of you, but I'm exhorting, I'm encouraging you, I'm pushing you to evaluate your physical health. Now, some of you might have, a genetic issue. Some of you, maybe you might be diabetic and you can do nothing about that and you have to be on insulin. That's okay. But I want you to change the things that you can change. Change your diet, change your routine, change the way you do things, change how you start your day, how you end your day. Breathe, nurture yourself. Okay, health set. And the last one is soul set. Soul set is simply simplifying. Simplify your life. Ask yourself the 3 R's. Listen, here goes a nugget for you, the 3 R's. Whenever you're going to do something, ask yourself, is it required of me? The first R, is it required of me? Does it give me the greatest reward? And does it produce the greatest return? Whenever you're going to do something, ask yourself those questions. If you're having a hard time delegating, ask yourself the 3 R's. Is it required of me? Does it give me the best reward? And does it produce the greatest return? So it's, remember, required, reward, return. Required, reward, return. The 3 R's. So simplify, 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 simplify. Get off of social media. You may be spending way too much time on social media. Simplify. So this is a whole series in itself. but I want to go to the next slide here. So I want to explain this. I want you to look at this pyramid. This is not Maslow's pyramid. This is Milton's pyramid. This is Milton's pyramid of priorities. I want you to listen. Listen closely. Whatever your pyramid of priorities looks like is what your life looks like. A lot of people who come to life coaching with me, because I'm a counselor and a life coach, they will come to me and say, Milton, I need help. I'm a relational coach, a life coach, marriage coach. I need help. The first thing that I do is I have them fill out this pyramid. Let me see what your life looks like. And I ask the women, what's at the very top? You know, the top basically is what's most important to you, what consumes your thoughts the most, what consumes your time the most, what you think about the most, what's most important to you. As you go from the top to the bottom, what's most to least important. What do you dedicate your most time to? So most women will say my children, my family. Men will say my job because they're providers. And so they're both messed up because they both have it wrong. Okay? They both have it wrong. So let me explain. What's at the top is consumes most of your time. What comes next. Most people's pyramids are upside down, and therefore their lives are upside down. Their lives are upside down. Let me show you what your pyramid should look like. What it should look like, okay? So let me show you the next pyramid. This is what your pyramid should look like ideally, so that your life is in somewhat in order. Okay, I want you to understand this. At the very top of your pyramid, faith should be at the top. Whatever your faith is, whatever your faith is. I'm a born again believer in Christ. So for me, God, Jehovah is at the top. Jesus, the Trinity. So whatever your faith is at the top. And the reason that I have faith at the top is because the Bible that I read says that you shall have no other gods before you. Whatever I put at the top is my God. If money's at the top, that's my God. If my wife is at the top, that's my God. If it's a car collection that someone has, that's your God. Whatever is most important are your children, that's your God. Okay, I want you to understand that. So faith is at the top, and then it's me, you. A lot of people say, well, that's a little selfish, man. What do you mean you place yourself above everyone else, right underneath your faith? Well, you can't give what you don't have. Let me explain this again. You can't give what you don't have. You can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead someone to a place that you've never been to before. If you don't nurture you, feed you, love you, care for you, extend mercy to you, how are you going to do it to other people? You see, someone once said, love your neighbor as, fill in the blank, yourself. So in order to love my neighbor, I need to love myself. And that's why I've placed myself second in command. Faith, me. I've got to work on my heart, my mind, my soul, and my body. If those four things are in check, then I will be a blessing to everyone that's underneath me on that pyramid. It's the proverbial flight attendant that says, in the event of an emergency, if we were to lose pressure in the cabin, oxygen masks will drop from the very top cabin. Make sure that you put it on first before you try and help people, Mother Teresa. Don't go around helping people. You'll die in the process. Put the mask on first. That's my greatest encouragement. Put the mask on first. Nurture yourself. And then after that, of course, you have your spouse and then your children and everything else. It's a no-brainer. Put your life in order. Put your life in order. Now, can you recalibrate? Can you change the way that you think? Is this even possible? People ask. Can I change those old habits and create new ones? Absolutely. My favorite topic is neuroplasticity. And that's a whole conference. Neuroplasticity is the brain's superpower, my friend, if you've ever heard about it. If you're an educator, you know what neuroplasticity is. If you know a psychologist or a psychiatrist, most doctors, neurologists know about neuroplasticity if they're up to date. Neuroplasticity is pretty much the brain's ability to reorganize itself both in structure and how it functions. So can I recalibrate? Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people will say, well, I was born on the wrong side of town. I was born to a poor family. I was born to an uneducated family. My parent died when he was young and he had a heart attack. Therefore, I'm probably going to have a heart attack too and die just as he did. No. Recalibrate. Change your beliefs. So I want to focus on the bottom. Go to the bottom, neurogenesis. Neurogenesis basically says that our neurons, our nerve cells are continually regenerating. Even when there's trauma to the brain, Even though, you know, when someone has been addicted to some kind of a substance and they're clean and they've been off of that drug for a long time, the question is, can I regenerate those nerve cells, those brain cells? Will it regenerate? Absolutely. Certain parts of the brain, especially the frontal lobe, will regenerate. It will. You know, there's a scripture that I love, and I'm going to share a little bit later. It talks about, you know, renewing the mind. It's one of my favorite authors is the Apostle Paul, renewing the mind. Why does he say that? Because the mind can be renewed. It's constantly renewing itself. And then we create new synapses. As we think, listen, as we submit our minds to difficult tasks, to problem solving, doing math problems, Sudoku, putting puzzles together, you know, figuring things out, learning a new language, reading a book that challenges you, you create new synapses. Those new synapses are connections, guys. It's like a bridge that connects one nerve cell to another, one brain cell to another. It connects these synapses, makes all these connections. And then eventually all of those dots are interconnected. And man, you're a quick thinker. You're a quick problem solver because you've made those connections. People tell me, Milton, how do you have such great memory? Because I've made connections. I wasn't born that way. I was told as a child that I was ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, that I would never do anything in life, that my consistent talking would get me into trouble. And here I am. Here I am. Why? Because I understood this from an early age, that I needed to connect those dots, those nerve cells. Now, within the synapses, there are areas that need to be strengthened and there are areas that need to be weakened. So the areas that need to be strengthened are the ones that you want to practice and practice and practice and practice. When people say, well, I'm just not good at math. Well, you're not good at math because you don't practice. Practice and practice and practice and practice. Do it over and over and over and over again. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. How long does it take to form a habit? You're thinking 21 days. Wrong answer. That's not it. Science has proven that it takes 21 days to break a habit, 63 days to form a new one. 63 days of doing the same thing, 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 the same. We create a strong synapses. Why do we want to weaken a synapses? You want to weaken those areas that are negative habits. Those are the areas that you want to weaken. Look, let me give you a pictorial analogy. If you're walking, I love going on hikes through forests. If you go on a hike, you usually look for a trail. Now, the trail that is already there, you can tell that it's been there for years because it's got a lot of ruts. That trail is there because people traverse that trail all the time, all the time, all the time. And they've created ruts. Grass doesn't grow there. Flowers don't grow there. Weed doesn't grow there. It's just dirt, dirt. But if that trail is no longer leading you to a good destination, if that trail is leading you to a place of danger, it's going to jeopardize your life, it would be stupid of you to continue walking the same trail. That would be idiotic. So what do? You stop traversing the same trail. What happens? Eventually, over time, the trail starts to go grass, weed. The dirt erodes. It starts to cover itself and it becomes part of the terrain. And so you start a new trail. Is it going to be easy? Oh, no. Are you going to establish it the first day? Oh, no. You're going to have to walk on it 63 days, 63 days, 63 days, over and over and over. And the consistency of doing that one thing over and over and over and over and over is going to create a new trail leading you to a new destination. I want you to be encouraged that whatever's holding you back, you can change. You just got to be consistent. Strengthen certain synapses, weaken others. You got to do that. That's part of recalibrating. Recalibrating doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. Let me share an analogy with you. Now, I love gardening. I love gardening. And I love the analogy of the Chinese bamboo tree. The Chinese bamboo tree, this is the seed. The Chinese bamboo tree is a very special seed. It takes a special gardener to plant it. The reason it takes a special gardener, it's not because he has to dig a big hole. It takes a special gardener because he has to be extremely patient. Why? Because it takes the Chinese bamboo tree 5 years. 5 years to break the ground, to sprout through the ground. 5 whole years, guys, to break the ground. 5 years. That's what it takes. And so the gardener has to water it and cultivate it every single day so that after 5 years, boom, it breaks the ground. And what does he get? He gets something that looks just like this. That little sprout comes out of the ground, and he knows that it's alive. It's alive. But here comes the miracle. Listen to me. Listen, 5 years. It took 5 years to grow, to sprout. 5 years. But in the next 6 to 8 weeks, listen, in the next 6 to 8 weeks, it will grow a total of 80 feet. 80 feet is like a 7-story building in 6 to 8 weeks. You know what that means? Those of you who are math nerds, it means that it grows almost 1 inch per hour during that time. So in 6 to 8 weeks, you have a 7-story building. So the question is, did that bamboo tree start growing on the 5th year? It grew the moment it was planted. It started growing deep and wide, deep and wide, deep and wide. Why? It needed a strong foundation to create such a big structure. How does that compare to you? Whatever you're allowing in your mind, those seeds that Mario talked about, those seeds, as you water them with the same thought over and over and over, you may not see the immediate results, but they're growing roots deep and wide. And eventually it will sprout and will produce an outcome. Now, the outcome can be good and the outcome can also be bad. So be careful and make sure that you sow the right seeds into fertile grounds. Now, if you have children, be very cautious because your words have power. Power to create life or death in a child. Power to create a destination. They're seeds. And as you repeat them, you water them. And eventually, they will bear fruit, good or bad. So that's the analogy of the Chinese bamboo tree. I love it. Just always so profound. And it makes me think. I always think about the seeds that we're planting consistently. Whatever I tell myself, I'm the greatest gardener because I talk to myself all day long. I'm constantly talking to myself. So the question is, in 2021, you probably have a goal. You're like, okay, I'm at point A. I need to go to point B. Whatever point B is for you. Maybe it's to go back to school. Maybe it's to get a master's. Maybe it's to get a doctorate, a PhD. Maybe it's to start a business. Maybe it's to retire. Maybe it's to travel, to run a marathon, to marry. Whatever it is, whatever it may be. Point A to point B. And the question is, there's a gap. What does it take to get to point B? Because a lot of people stay at point A. It's like a baseball player who doesn't want to steal base and run to second base. They just stay there their whole life on first base because they're unwilling. They're unwilling to move. They're unwilling to take the risk. So let me ask you a question. What do you think it takes to get to point B? Whatever that looks like for you. Well, there are 3 factors. 3 factors: intentionality, discipline, consistency. Mario mentioned consistency. 3 factors. Listen, I want you to evaluate your own life. What is intentionality? Intentionality means that you are intentional enough to envision that one thing coming to pass, whatever it is. Example, run a marathon. You have to be able to see yourself in your spirit running a marathon, crossing the finish line, raising your hands in glorious victory. Then you have to have the discipline to get out of the lazy boy chair, put on your sneakers, get on a plan, and go run. Of course, to change your diet and all these things. Run. And third, you have to continue to run consistently, over and over and over, like my friend did, 600 miles in order to run a 26.2 mile race. 3 words I want you to take with you today: intentionality, discipline, and consistency. But what is the question is, what keeps somebody from going from point A to point B? The answer is very simple. It's fear. Watch this video, very short. This is a little boy who's afraid. He's afraid because the water is deep. Listen. He's crying because he's afraid, and then his mom comes and picks him up and says, look, it's not that deep. Come on. He goes, oh. But he was afraid. And because of his fear, he was unwilling to let go. So what exactly is fear? I always like to share this with people. Some of you might know this analogy. What exactly is fear? Well, fear, as an acronym, fear is false evidence appearing real. In other words, it's something that is non-existent. You've created in your mind. It's like the boogeyman. The boogeyman's in your closet. Well, you tell that to a child repeatedly, he'll believe it. Eventually, he will start to hallucinate and see a boogeyman poking its eyes out from the closet door, and there's nothing there. So that's what fear looks like. So fear is that one thing, it's false evidence that keep us from going from point A to point B. Now, fear is a liar. And fear will incapacitate. Fear will handicap. Fear is right here. Now, let me just preface by saying this. You were not birthed with fear. You're not birthed with fear. I always tell myself this. Whenever fear tries to creep in, I remind myself, because again, I'm a minister. So I will quote a scripture and I will say, Milton, for God has not given you the spirit of fear or timidity, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Power, love, and a sound mind. Power, love, and a sound. And I repeat that over and over and over until my mind kicks in to second gear, and then I push on, push forward. So I was reading a story about Bill Buckner. Awesome story about Bill Buckner. Bill Buckner played on the Boston Red Sox, World Series 1986. Those of you baseball historians probably know the story. Now, Bill Buckner is known for one thing alone. Let me tell you. World Series 1986, Bill Buckner, Boston Red Sox. They were the favorites. They were winning. They were supposed to take the World Series. A week before the World Series, Bill Buckner was interviewed by a sports magazine. And Bill Buckner was asked the question. Says, Bill Buckner, what is the greatest thing that could ever happen to you? What is like your end goal in life? He says, my end goal in life as a baseball player is to win the World Series, man. It's never happened. I want to win the World Series before I retire. Bill Buckner, this is a week before. Bill Buckner, what is the worst thing that could ever happen to you? Oh, he says, the worst thing that could ever happen to me is what I dread all the time. He says, I'm always thinking about the fact that I could lose the World Series due to a ground ball going right between my legs. That I would miss the ball, not catch it, it would go right between my legs. He says, I think about this all the time. It drives me nuts. That's the worst thing that could happen to me. Fast forward a week later, the World Series. The Mets are playing the Red Sox. The Mets are up to bat. Bill Buckner is on first base. The Mets bat. The ball goes to first base. Bill Buckner loses the ball and it goes right between his legs and they lose the World Series. Yes, true story. Google it, find it on YouTube. You can watch the video. What he said became prophetic. What Bill Buckner dreaded the most became his destination. Now, I'm not saying that just because you think about something like that, that it's going to happen to you. But what I'm saying is that you do increase the probability of that one thing happening to you in your life. So whatever you're dreading today, let me tell you, whatever you're thinking about, older people dread having Alzheimer's or early dementia or Parkinson's. The more you think about it, the more susceptible you become, the higher the probability that you will get that one thing that you dreaded the most. So whatever you're fearing, start breaking fear. Remember, you've not been given a spirit of fear. That's not in you. It's not wired in you. You've wired it in. Now you've got to wire it out. So let me teach you really quick. Let me show you. So we have something that's called a paradigm shift. We've got to shift our paradigms. A paradigm is something that is a mental construct, an idea, oftentimes a false idea. See, the Apostle Paul, I told you, one of my favorite authors, he said, to be transformed by the renewing of the mind. He says, transformation, metamorphose, that's where metamorphosis comes from. The caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That whole transformative cycle, going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, that's a renewing. We do that with our minds. If we want complete transformation, if we want complete recalibration, we've got to transform our minds, got to renew our minds in order to be transformed. Now, I love this definition is, of course, that thought processes and mind patterns, I said mental constructs, and those are paradigms. They're usually faulty. They're located in the unconscious, the subconscious mind. I want you to understand this. The subconscious mind is filled with paradigms, with ideas that are skewed oftentimes. And so if we're not careful, we can become like the elephant. When an elephant is born under a circus tent, it's born a small little baby. And the first thing that they do is to the elephant is that they put a metal ring around its foot and they tie it to a chain, they stake it in the ground. And the elephant knows when it's little that it can't move as long as it's tied to that chain. And the trainer whips it and it teaches it how to do all these tricks while it's chained. The elephant grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and all they do is they make the ring a little bigger, a little wider, but the chain is the same one, the same stake in the ground. And the elephant understands that as long as it's under the tent with a chain, with a ring on its leg, and it sees a trainer with a whip, that it's not going anywhere, and it's powerless. It's incapacitated. You know what? They've created a paradigm in that elephant. That repetitive experience has trained the elephant to believe that it's powerless. That's the repetition. You see, the problem is that they've never put the elephant in front of a mirror. The elephant has never seen its potential. Nobody has ever told the elephant, "You've got great potential, elephant. You're a mastodont. You're a 3-ton beast. All it takes is one little tug from that chain and you'll break it and free yourself." Nobody's ever told it. It's never seen itself in a mirror. What it's been told is the polar opposite. You're powerless. You're weak. You're subject to me, trainer. Don't be like the elephant. All of us have these paradigms, and I'll share 3 of them very quickly with you. When I do this in a conference, I ask people, fill in the blanks. Curiosity killed? 100% of you are saying the cat. Ignorance is bliss. Knowledge is power. Everybody says that. And I clap and I say, good job. But those are all lies. They're false. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. Stupidity killed the cat. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance still kills and destroys. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. So we've been fed all these lies and we believe them and we rehearse them in our minds and we believe them and that's how we live our lives. These are simple. You may have some major paradigms that you need to take out of your mind, that you need to wire out and wire in some new ones. You know, I used to go to a halfway house where I would speak to inmates that were straight out of prison. They would go to a halfway house and go there for rehabilitation for 6 months. And I would go in there every Sunday evening, and I would speak to them. I would help them renew their minds through scripture, through psychology. And I remember that I would ask every time I got a new set of inmates, I would get 20 at a time. I mean, these guys were, come on, they were ugly looking dudes. They had committed some heinous crimes. I mean, it was scary to be there, to say the least. But I would go in there because I had a mission. I had a mission. Transform the minds. There was a mission. And so I walked in there and I had these 20 people there. And I would ask them a question. I would ask these men, who is your greatest influence in your life? They would all say their father. I would say, was the influence positive or negative? They would all say negative. Then I would ask, can you describe your father using an adjective? They would say the most horrible things about their dads. I would have to contain myself not to cry because I have such a wonderful father. I've had such a wonderful experience growing up as a child that I couldn't fathom what they went through. Here goes the last question I would ask. Listen, powerful. The last question was, did your father ever tell you that you would end up in prison someday? And they all said, yes, yes. Those are paradigms. Those are paradigms. No one ever told them contrary to that. Those are paradigms. Let me tell you. Let me say this. Solomon said, one of the wisest men who ever walked the earth, he says, where the mind goes, the man follows. Where the mind goes, the man follows. A Chinese, a minister, a missionary who was traveling, who was walking the streets in China, he was walking down an alleyway. He walked across this tattoo parlor and he was amazed by what he saw, all the intricate artwork on the wall. This artist was an old man. He was in his 70s and he was well known by everyone as to be one of the most famous, one of the best tattoo artists in that area. And so this minister, this missionary looks at all these intricate designs, but he sees one that's right there in the middle that had no intricacy to it. There was nothing novel about it. It was kind of weird because it was the only one that had English inscription, and it was a skull with an inscription on it that said "Born to Lose," born to lose. And so, intrigued by this, the missionary goes into the shop, and the tattoo artist he welcomes him, and he says, "What can I do for you?" He says, "Sir, I just want to say congratulations. You're an amazing artist. Your work is amazing, but I have a question for you. I noticed that right in the middle of all the other ones, you have a very simple one. It's in English. It's a skull. It says born to lose." He said, "Why do you have that there? Why would anyone ever want to have that tattooed on their body?" Listen to this. This is powerful. True story. Powerful. Why would anyone ever want to have this tattooed on their bodies? And this is what the artist said. Before tattoo is on the body, the tattoo is already on the mind. Wow. Tattoo is already on the mind, he said. These are paradigms, mental constructs that require a recalibration, changing beliefs. Did you know that by the age of 17, a child has heard, "No, you can't," 150,000 times, and only 5,000, "Yes, you can"? By the time he's 15, he's heard, "No, you can't," 150,000 times versus 5,000, "Yes, you can." In other words, the majority of all people are programmed to fail. They are programmed to fail. And it's going to be up to you to reprogram. My father taught me the power of yet. The power of yet. Every time I was told you won't, every time I said, for instance, I've not run a marathon. I want to run a marathon, but I haven't run a marathon. My father would say, "Yet." I haven't finished school yet. I haven't graduated, Dad, yet. I haven't succeeded in this area yet. I haven't done this yet. He says, always attach a very simple word to your negative statement so that your impossibility becomes a possibility. A possibility. Just by adding one word. My friends, I want you to start to listen to what you say. I want to encourage you to start listening to your phraseology, because your phraseology will determine your destination. I finish with 3 points. 3 points. People ask me all the time, say, "Milton, what does it change to recalibrate? What does it take to recalibrate? What does it take to change the mindset, to acquire a new one?" Well, we talked about being intentional, disciplined, and consistent, but let me tell you 3 simple steps. Well, not too simple. They're simple steps. They're easy to read. They're hard to do. Step number 1, this is your nugget. Change your beliefs. Change your beliefs. I'm not talking about faith here, guys. I'm not talking about a belief system. I'm talking about what you believe about yourself. Remember the pyramid of priorities? Faith and then you. What you believe about yourself. Man, if I can't encourage myself, forget me trying to encourage people. If I can't help myself, forget me trying to help other people. If I can't coach myself, forget me trying to coach other people. I've got to change my beliefs. I can't say, "Yes, you can," when not deep down on the inside, I'm thinking, "Oh, no, I can't." Change your beliefs. And when you change your beliefs, number 2, you'll change your behavior, because there's a mind-body connection. When you change this, you either release more dopamine, you reduce your cortisol, you increase your oxytocin. I mean, there is a direct chemical a biological connection between the mind and the body. It completely changes everything. You can go from a state of inadequacy to a state of empowerment simply by the things that you think. And number 3, after you've changed your beliefs and you've produced a different behavior, your different behavior will lead you to a different outcome. And it all started with a different belief system. Remember this: what you think becomes a word. What you say becomes an emotion. Your emotion drives your decisions. Your decisions become actions. Your actions repeated over time, they become your habits. Your habits lead you to form your character, and your character leads you to your final destination in life. And it all started with a thought. 3 things I want you to remind yourself every day, my friends. You got to get up every morning and you have to say, "I can, I will, I must." I can, I will, I must. I can, I will, I must. When you feel like you can't, when you feel like you won't, and like you feel like it's over. I can, I will, I must. Guys, thank you for your attention. God bless you. God bless you. I wish you success in everything that you do. Let's connect. I'm putting my information up there. Take a picture of it. Let's connect. Send me a DM through Instagram. Let me know what you thought about today. Let's follow each other on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I've got a podcast called Recalibrate. Highly encourage you to listen to it. It includes theology, psychology, and spirituality. It's powerful stuff. Thank you once again for your attention. And Thank you for the invitation, by the way.
Thank you, Milton, so much. I'm ready to recalibrate. I can, I will, I must.
That's right.
Really appreciate you giving us this wonderful presentation. And I see that we have some questions that have come through. So I'm going to cue them up now. Can you please repeat the 3 words? I got intentionality. What are the other 2?
So it's intentionality, discipline, and consistency. Intentionality, discipline, and consistency.
We had another question. It says, this is great. I'm wondering if the recording will be available to rewatch. Yes, it will be. It will take us some time, but we will get it to you when we can. So thank you so much for your question. Okay. How seriously is neuroplasticity hindered or affected after having overcome a medical dependency? What helps the brain regain this ability?
Well, neuroplasticity, like I mentioned, neurogenesis, our bodies regenerate nerve cells automatically. That happens in certain regions of the brain. Now, I would encourage the individual who just asked that question to connect with Dr. Daniel Amen. Okay, because I'm assuming that question is coming from a place of deep interest, perhaps because they're helping somebody or perhaps they've been through something themselves. Dr. Daniel Amen he's the leading psychiatrist in the nation. He has done about 250,000 brain scans and shows you the structure of the brain and how it is affected by some kind of a chemical dependency and how you can get it through different activities, through different, nutrition and supplementation to help you regenerate and bring that brain back to health. He talks about how if you're a parent and you have boys who want to play football, that is the worst thing that you can have your son do is play football or box, because those blows to the head form traumas and start to kill certain regions. So I would encourage that person to look for Dr. Daniel Amen. He has a wonderful TED Talk. Daniel Amen is spelled A-M-E-N, like amen. You are on mute, Lori.
I'm muting myself. Recalibrating.
Calibrate.
So my last question for you is, what key takeaways would you like to give our audience? And our audience has been experiencing several different things. I mean, they went through a pandemic in 2020 and they're trying to get themselves back on track. I know that we have people who are trying to find jobs, people who have been laid off. They're going through multiple things. So what key takeaways would you have for them to recalibrate?
I think that everyone's greatest nemesis is oneself. You are your greatest nemesis. You are your greatest enemy. Because as I mentioned earlier, you've got to listen to your phraseology. Whatever you set your heart and mind to, whatever you are intentional enough to envision with your spirit, whatever you're intentional enough to envision, like I said, you have to be so intentional, whether it is getting a new job, whether it is starting an enterprise, whatever it is, whatever you want to do, whatever your point B is, you have to be intentional enough to perceive it with your 5 physical senses. You have to be able to close your eyes and feel it. That's how intentional. You have to have the discipline to start and the consistency to continue doing it. But here's one very important factor. The reason that most people fail with their New Year's resolution, the reason why when I pick out 100 people and they have New Year's resolution, the reason that 80 out of 100 fail is due to one factor. They didn't write it down. They did not write it down. Something happens in the brain when you write it down, you write down that resolution. When you are resolute and you have a goal, whatever that point B is, when you write it down, you put it up on your wall and you see it every day, whether you want to call it a vision board, whatever you want to call it, but you see that one statement every day. And one more thing, Lori, after seeing that every day, after you write it down, you have to have a plan. And the plan is supposed to be a SMART plan, a SMART goal. And many of you know this if you've been reading leadership books. SMART is an acronym that stands for your goal has to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. The last one is very important, time-bound. When people say, I want to run a marathon, but they don't know when, that really sucks. You've got to know when. You've got to tell me, I want to do it in 6 months. Okay, so now we have a timeline. Specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, it's time-bound. SMART goals, whatever you set your heart and mind to, intentional, disciplined, consistent, envision it, write it down, and be smart about it.
Oh, awesome. That was a great takeaway. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you guys, Milton has shared his information with us. So if we want to connect with him, you guys go ahead and do so. I am going to bring in another special person, Jackie Cifuentes. She's our other co-chair for our mentoring program, and she's going to leave us with the announcements. Jackie?
Hi everyone, I'm Jackie Cifuentes. I'm the other mentorship committee co-chair, and I'm so excited you've tuned in tonight. Thank you for joining us. After this event, you'll receive a survey, which is very important to us. Please be sure to complete that as we try to get feedback from our audience for future events. And speaking of future events, be sure not to miss our general body meeting, February 2nd. I'll be sharing a lot more on our mentorship program then, so make sure to tune into that as well. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and buenas noches.